and welcome to the SEO podcast with me, Andy Kinsey, your weekly marketing podcast. In this week's podcast, we're going to be answering the 8 common questions for SEO that I get asked on a very regular basis by new clients and people on social media. So without further ado, let's get on with it. Question number 1, what is SEO? So SEO stands for search engine optimization, and search engine optimization focuses on the minor modifications or even the large modifications you can do to your website to improve it to increase the organic search traffic from the likes of Google, Bing, and other search engines around the world. Now, we talk about SEO being modifications to your website because it's generally quite technical, but it can be to do with your content, it can be to do with links, and it can be, when we talk about content, it can be to do with text, your images, your videos, but it can also be to do with content offsite. So if you're listening to this absolutely anywhere, that is SEO as well, because if you look at the description, there'll be a link back to a website, whether that's the SEO Andy website or the actual podcast website. And in terms of me promoting this podcast, I've linked to Apple Podcast, Shopify, Spotify, Audible, all the podcast networks, and I've increased the SEO organic traffic to the podcast to promote it, and that is all SEO. And of course, I've done lots of other stuff. So that is what SEO is. It's to promote the organic search worth of a website. Now, that brings us neatly to question 2. That is, what is the difference between organic and paid? So organic search versus paid search. Now, this is quite simple. Organic is free, and paid are the adverts. Now, generally the easiest way you used to be able to differentiate these is paid was the top few adverts at the top of search, and the free ones were just below that. You used to see 3 or 4 paid, and then you'd see all the free ones. Now, things have changed a little bit, and you see some paid adverts at the bottom. However, Bing and Google in general mark the ads with a little sign that says ad next to it. Your shopping carousel generally is all ads these days. It's not always. But yeah, so if you pay for Google AdWords, that's all paid search. And the other key difference is that whilst, and this will bring us on to the next question in a second, whilst on your website you input things like meta tags, you're not guaranteed to get that output on search engine results. With paid search, you're generally guaranteed to get pretty much the advert you put in there, although there is some dynamic components or 3 or 4 different variants you can input. Now, as I say, you control that, but you're pretty much guaranteed to get that. So that's the difference. What is free, other than your time and effort, of course, versus paid, which is your cost and your time and effort. So yeah, that's the difference. That brings us neatly, as I say, to question 3. What are meta tags? Now, meta tags are things like your meta title, the blue link that you see on Google is the best way to describe this, but you also see it in the top of your browser. So if you visit a web page and you see in the top of your browser, it'll say the same as the blue link on Google. And your meta description, that's the sentence underneath the blue link. And those two generally will also get output on social media, unless you have what's called an open graph tags, which are other meta tags where you can control distinctly things like the title and description for Facebook and Twitter. But if you don't have those, by default, it'll go to the two meta tags that I've just described, the title and the description. You can also use your featured image and control the featured image using the overgraph tags. Now, the reason these are important is that basically they're your shop window to users, and they can vastly increase your click-through rate from search. So if a user has the right user search intent, they are more likely to click on your website. So if they're looking to buy a product and they can see that your page is a product from your title and your description, they are vastly more likely to click on your product than something that looks like it's an academic paper. And conversely, if they're doing research into let's say a series of products and to see what they do to the human body, they're not really likely to click on your product if it's a product, because they want to see academic papers and studies, or they want to find other information about that kind of product. And so you've got to understand user intent and what gets a conversion for your audience. So yes, the meta tags do still matter in 2023. And I've written an article about this. You can find it on SEOandy.com. Click on the blog section. You'll find it there as a featured post. The other question I get asked a lot, it's not one of our questions today, is do keywords matter? Does the keyword meta tag matter? No, it doesn't. It does no harm to put it there, because it'll focus your mind, and you often see the keyword meta tag hidden away these days in a database. However, it allows the likes of, say, Yoast or Rank Math as a plugin focus your page and understand what your page is about, and give you an artificial reading score, and understand that your page title, your heading tags, etc., and your content is clearly focused on those keywords, which is a really good tool, but you don't need to output it into your code. So yeah, meta tags do still matter. They are important, and specifically your title and your description. There's a few other meta tags that you might want to look at, such as your language tag and your location tags, but that's more to do with you if you're multilingual, multi-location. So next up, we come to keywords and URLs. Now, these can be quite important. The thing you have to consider here is more to do with having a short, snappy, rememberable URL. So for example, my URL for my brand is SEOandy.com. It's really easy to remember. It's better than having my name, which I also have a domain and have a blog on. However, SEOandy.com, really easy to remember. What you can do is, and it has a keyword in it, SEO. However, that is much easier to remember than affordable SEO in Manchester.com, which I'm sure someone has out there. In terms of what you can do, because lots of domains have gone, is you can put dash in there. However, what you've got to remember is people aren't going to remember that. So, as I say, short, snappy. If you can include a keyword, a location, go for it. However, my top advice is generally to go with your brand, because your brand will generally be unique, and where possible, go for a top level domain, .com, .net, etc. And if you are country specific and you're not really going to look to go beyond your country at any point in the future, go country level and see if you can get a keyword domain in your country. Because really that helps, and you may find it easier to rank in country than you do on a top level domain. So, speaking of ranking, I am also constantly asked the difference between internal linking and inbound linking, mainly because when you're reading blogs, they're often mentioned in the same blogs and articles, and newbies to the world of SEO constantly get confused by these terms. Now, let's start with internal linking. Internal linking are links between your own pages on your own website. So if I was linking from my homepage to my service page, it's an internal link. Your navigational links in your header or your footer are internal links. And links from within your blog, for instance, to other pages on your website, your products, etc., are all internal links. Internal links should always have a descriptive anchor text. That's the text that you are using to link. It should never say, for example, click here or click to go to, for example. It should always perhaps be your product name, your service name, because that will be descriptive. Inbound links are links coming to your website from other websites. And again, you're looking for descriptive links here, but you can't always control them. They should be from within your niche or your market, and they should be high quality. So you're looking for a multitude of things here, and you're not looking for basically cheap links you can get anywhere off every blog, because everyone can do that. You could go out tomorrow and get 100 links from Joe Blogs on the street. The reality is you want the best quality links you can get from within your industry. And that brings us to the question that I'm also constantly asked, because it was a big thing many years ago and Google appears not to have updated it in years, is does PageRank still exist? Now, the answer is yes. It's one of about 200 factors Google uses that we know for search engine ranking. The reality is it's now a much smaller entity than it was, which is why they don't outwardly update it, but also they don't outwardly update the number, which was 1 to 10, because it was kind of easy to manipulate, even though they had slowed the update of that. PageRank, for those of you who don't know, was a inbound link score of how they saw your website, of how they scored that voting mechanism, as it were, which is why ultimately they stopped the scoring publicly. They just didn't want people to manipulate it, because they didn't want people to build their own little link farms into their website. They didn't want people to find loopholes in what was good or bad spam, etc., etc. So they stopped updating it. But as of at least 2018, and even more recently, Google has confirmed PageRank still exists within its algorithm, which means links are still extremely valuable, and we know that because the patents have never disappeared. Google's pretty much confirmed links will always be valuable as voting assets towards your website. It's pretty much the only way it knows if you are an authority or not. So yes, PageRank does still exist. The next question is, and this kind of relates to content, so going back to inbound links and meta tags here, what is alt text? So on your images on your website, you'll have this thing called alt text, and alt text means alternative text, and it's used primarily by accessibility tools to describe what an image is. However, it's also used by search engines to understand what an image is too. And it's really important that you use alt text, because, as I say, it's used by accessibility tools, and I can't overestimate that enough as a way of getting more websites accessible, but also from a purely selfish point of view as a website owner, if you get search engines to index your images, then they have to know what your image is. Yeah, they've got AI tools and processing tools that may understand that something's a red umbrella, but they don't understand the context of your image. So you've really got to write a good sentence there that describes the image. Think of it, and you can also add a caption to your image that furthers that. So you can really write two really good sentences there that describe your image. And by doing this, not only do you make your website more accessible and usable, but also you're welcome in search engines and get more image rankings, and you may well get more normal rankings from it. The next question that goes along with that is, do you need to know how to code? And the answer is no, you don't. Because if you use a tool such as WordPress or Shopify, then everything's built for you, and that's even more the case with the likes of Wix. The reality is these are platforms that have been built for starters, SMEs who don't want to have the bother of hiring a developer at every single turn. And if you go out and hire an SEO, then actually most of us will have had some developer experience, or will be able to point you to someone who you can hire for an hour, 2 hours at a relatively low cost to fix a specific issue, such as I've several occasions come across where a WordPress template isn't outputting alt tags even though you're putting it into the system. So little things like that take absolutely no time to fix for a developer, but actually if you haven't got a developer on hand, it's something that you just won't be able to do yourself. So no, you don't need to know how to code, but actually if you hire someone, it's relatively easy. The next question, and our final question today, is where can you learn more about SEO? So there are all the resources that we listed in our previous podcast about how to predict the future of or how to predict the future of what Google's going to do in terms of algorithms. There's Ahrefs, SEMrush, there's Rusty Brick on YouTube, but also we have recently launched a new ebook which, if you buy it before the end of February, is just 99p or 99 cents on Amazon. To get that offer, as I say, between now and the end of February, head over to seoandy.com/book and you will get that book for just 99p. After that, it is £2.50 or $3.50. So head over now to seoandy.com/book. All proceeds from that book go to supporting this podcast and keeping this podcast running. Thank you very much in advance for those who buy that book. And just another thing about that book, you can get it completely for free on Kindle Unlimited. That's right, completely for free. And again, that's a time limited thing till the end of February. But the more pages you read, the more royalties we get. So hop on over and read the book. Thank you very much for joining us again on the SEO podcast. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and most of all, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us get found on every single platform. See you next week.